Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus. So, what focal length is best for portraits when shooting either 35mm film or a full frame DSLR or a full frame mirrorless camera? We're going to be looking at three sets of images shot with each focal length. Now, before I continue, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you're reminded anytime I come out with a new video. And I usually publish a new video every Monday morning at 11, as well as Wednesday mornings at 11 Eastern Time. Now, I know opinions vary as to what the best focal length for portraits is. Probably the 135 has been around the longest and was popular at one time. Then it was the 105, more recently the 85, and right now it's all over the place with different people preferring different focal lengths. When I first got started in photography with my first Nicormat camera, it came with a 50mm lens, and then I bought the 35 2.8 and finally got a portrait lens, and that lens was the 105 2.5. The reason I bought that lens, I had read a test report in Modern Photography and they just raved about it. This was the newer version. The original version came out in 1959, has the chrome front, and this was the all black version. Still wasn't multi-coated, but this was the version I used for decades. Shot thousands of portraits with that lens. Even when I went to digital, I continued to use that lens until I purchased the 105 2.8 macro lens for use with my D810. All right, so let me explain what I did. Let me explain my setup. Rather than switching lenses, I used the 70 to 200 2.8 Z mount because I could easily switch from 85 to 105 to 135 for my test. The camera was on a tripod, and for this first series of images you're going to see, I did not move the camera. All the images were shot at the same distance. I used a mannequin, and they were all shot at 2.8. And from the front of the lens to the eye of the mannequin was 6 feet. And like I said, I did not change camera position. So I went from 85 to 105 to 135, and I used that display on the lens to show my exact focal length rather than just relying on the zoom ring. So here we are. On the left is the 85mm, as you can see, at 6 feet. In the middle is the 105, and on the right side is the 135. Focus was on the left eye of the mannequin. Now, what you need to look at here first is how much closer the longer focal lengths will bring you. But also, I think what's very important is look at the background. With the 85 at 6 feet, we see more of the background, which is to be expected. At 105, we see less. And of course, at 135, we see even less. But also notice above the model's head, to the left as you're viewing the picture, would be to the not model, mannequin, to the right of her head, you see that circular dark image. That, I don't know, it's a picture or some small mirror, whatever. But notice its size. At 85mm, it's fairly small. It's a little bigger at 105 and even bigger still at 135. So not only does the longer focal length show you less of the background, it also pulls the background closer to the subject, making it look like it's closer to the subject than it actually is. Next, what I did, I took those same images you just saw and I cropped them in Photoshop to 4:5 size, representing what they would look like as an 8:10, a popular size for portraits. And I tried to crop them exactly the same. They may be off a little bit, but now the image size is the same. The mannequin head is the same size in each of these 4 images that you see, and there's only, if any, a slight difference in the background. I think the most noticeable thing, and part of that could be my cropping, but again, I tried to do it as accurately as possible. You will notice on the 85 millimeter image, that's actually a piano back there on the lower left, middle left actually of the image. You notice it looks a little bigger and then a little smaller on the 105 image and even smaller still in the image with the 135. Now, the image from the 85 millimeter lens was cropped a good bit to get an image this size, and the one from the 105 was cropped as well, but the one from the 135 was only slightly cropped. Now, those original images you saw were not cropped at all. They were sized to 4:6, which gives you the entire image. These I cropped to 4:5 to kind of show you what it would look like as an 8:10. And again, the 135 image just was very slightly cropped. So it's 6 feet. With a 135, you get a pretty tight head and shoulders portrait. Whereas with the other two, if you want a portrait that tight, you're going to need to crop them at 6 feet. And remember, that's 6 feet from the front of the lens. Okay, so what I did next, and this is going to be the last set of images you're going to see. So with the 85 millimeter, I was 4 feet 6 inches from the front of the lens to the eyes of the mannequin. What I tried to do was show at what distance with a head and shoulders portrait you would need to be for an 85 millimeter lens. And obviously there's some extra room here. There's room up top, there's room up bottom, but always want to allow a little room for cropping, especially if you were going to crop this to 8:10 proportion. This again is the full frame at 4:6. It gives you the full frame. There was no cropping done on these images at all. Now you will also notice on the right side, I have a ruler. The reason I put that ruler in, I wanted to be sure as I moved the camera back after taking the 85 millimeter shot, I had to move the camera back to get the exact same image size of the subject with the 105. So I had to, obviously, because it's a longer lens, had to move the camera further back. Same thing with the shot at 135. And that's why I put the ruler in. And I just looked at the top and the bottom markings on the ruler at the 85 shot and came as close as possible within like 1/8 of an inch on the other shots. So as you can see here, the image size of the mannequin is exactly the same, but the distance from the mannequin to the front of the lens was greater with the longer lens. Makes sense, right? Now look at the background. With the 85 millimeter lens at 4 feet 6 inches from the front of the lens, you could see a little bit more of the background. Not a huge difference, but you can see a little bit more. Same thing at 105. You see a little less. If you look at that clock in the upper left on the wall, you can see most of the clock on the 85 shot. On the 105 shot, you see a little less. And then we go to the 135 shot, and you hardly see that clock at all. And also look at that circular dark area just above the mannequin's head on the left side of the picture. That would be the mannequin's right. Notice how that circular image with 85 is small. It gets a little bigger with the 105 and bigger still with the 135. Again, the 135 lens will pull the background in more. So what have we learned here? Well, we learned that you're going to need more room, obviously, from the subject to yourself to where your camera is, the longer the lens you have. So if you're in a real small room, the shorter focal lengths, the 85 or maybe the 105 will be better. On the other hand, if you're outdoors, let's say on a city street shooting portraits, the longer lens may be better. It's going to isolate the subject a little bit better on the background, and even the faster lens. And these were all shot at 2.8, but an 85 1.2, or faster 105 or 105 1.4, or Nikon just released a 135 1.8. That's really going to blow out the background. There's going to be more background blur, and the longer lens is going to make it easier to find a less distracting background. Remember, since the longer lens pulls the background in closer, you don't need as much background, if that makes sense. For example, in this picture here, if I had moved the mannequin a little bit to her left or my right, so that the background was that door, that's a front door of the house there, I can then probably have isolated with the longer lens the subject right onto that door, and it would just look like a white background. Now, I hope you weren't bored with these images. I know basically had 3 images up on the screen, 3 sets of images. And the reason I did that, I think it's really important to study these images, to see the effect of different distances from the subject and the different focal lengths and what they do to the background. I hope this has helped if you're looking to buy a portrait lens or deciding which lens to use in a certain situation. And it all depends on your budget as well. The faster lenses are great, the 85 1.2s or the 105 1.4s, but they are very expensive. So that is it for this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I respond to all comments, or send me an email with your question. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you're alerted anytime I come out with a new video. And like I said earlier, I usually come out with a new video every Monday morning at 11 a.m. as well as Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.